Welcome to your next video lesson, number 26, and this one is circle graphs. For this lesson, you will need the TOC you were given in class. You will need a pen or pencil to take notes. You will also need a highlighter, marker, or colored pencil because we're going to talk about some different shadings on circles. So you will want to have those to shade in your circles on your paper. And this is part of the calculator unit, so you can have your calculator for when you start doing those calculations. You won't need it for today's note taking, but you will need it for this unit. So let's dive into some notes. Circle graphs, they're also called pie charts or pie graphs, can be used to represent data or information because they show the relationship between a part and a whole. And they also use percentages. So they're showing the part to the whole, not as a fraction, but they're showing it in relation to a percentage. So the whole is always 100%. So let's look at these examples. This shows the method of transportation of how students are getting to school. So if you look at this, the largest section is that green section. So we know that 40% of the kids are riding the school bus. That's the largest section. The next largest section means the next most popular way of getting to school is students walk to school, then they ride their bike, and then their students are getting driven to school by their parents. Here's the next one that you see. And in this example, it's students' grades. So if you look at this example, we have 42% or almost 43% of the students have B's. And out of this group, that means 12 students because they have a 12 there. So that means that 42% or 43% represents 12 students. The next biggest section was C's. That's 10 students or 36%, about 36%. And then A's was 4 students or 14%. And then D's was 7% or 2 students. Thank goodness there's not an F's section there. Good. Last example, this looks slightly different because pie charts or circle graphs can be 3D. They can be flat, or in this case, this one is 3D, but it's in different levels. And this shows the relationship or college expenses. So 62%, the biggest chunk goes to tuition and fees. And then you've got room and board, that's your living expenses. You got transportation costs, and then your books that you have to buy for your classes. So obviously you're going to have to pay the school for you to attend, and then your dorm costs and all your meals and all that kind of stuff, and then your transportation costs, and then your books for your class. So just wanted to expose you to some different ones and how they look. Sometimes they're going to have the percentages there for you. Sometimes they will not. So you will have to kind of estimate and guesstimate what you think they are. So that's why we started by showing you, or we're going to show you some different ways that you can use your understanding of percentages. So let's get started. So on your paper, you have a bunch of different circles, and we're going to talk about the different percentages that are represented by these circles. So the first circle, the whole thing is colored in. If you need to, take a second, color in that whole circle with your color so you can say this is all colored in. That means the whole thing is 100% colored in. It's full. The fraction representation is 1 over 1. It's a whole thing. So it's 100% or 1 over 1. Could I use 2 over 2? Sure. 3 over 3? Sure. They all simplify down to 1 over 1, but the whole thing is 100%. Make sure you have that. The second section, you see half shaded in. So go ahead and take a second and shade in the half. So what is half of a circle? Percentage-wise, half of 100% is 50%. So then the fraction, what is half as a fraction? Is 1/2. So go ahead and color that in, write 50% and 1/2. This all ties back into our frequent fractions, and we're just showing the fraction as a visual model, but it ties back into our frequent fractions. Our fractions are decimals or percents. This is all related. In our third section, we now took that half section and we're cutting it in half again. So what is half of a half? Half of 50% is 25%. So go ahead and color in that 25% section. That is a quarter. If I were to take that circle and cut it into fourths, that's what a fourth looks like. And if I take 25%, you know 25% is the same as 1/4. It's a frequent fraction. So you need to remember that 25% is the same as 1/4. It's also 0.1 or 0.25. If you look at the fourth section, what they've done is they've taken the half and the fourth and they've combined them. So you have 50% and 25%, and you add them together, that gives you 75%. 75% as a fraction is like taking 1/2 and adding 1/4, and that gives you 3/4. So all of these are things you should know and be able to think about what's the frequent fraction, what's it look like visually. You can also think about what does it look like as a fraction. The last little section, if you think about what is half of 25%, half of 25 is 12.5. So this is 12.5%. And if I slide my decimal 2 places to the left, it becomes 0.125. And that's another frequent fraction. 0.125 is the same as 1/8. That's one of my frequent fractions. 0.125 or 12.5 is 1/8. That's like having one slice of pizza. If I have 2/8, that's like having 1/4, which is the same as 25%. So all of those are those frequent fractions you should remember. If you don't remember those frequent fractions, you need to go back and review those frequent fraction flashcards. Okay, so those are just some little visuals that you want to be able to think about when we're doing circle graphs that will help you ballpark your estimations when you're talking about these different sections on a circle graph in case they don't give you the percent. Now, the last little section, just to see where you are, we're going to have you draw a circle. Go ahead and divide your circle in half with a dotted line and divide it in half the other way. So now it's divided into fourths, and you can either use that and divide it in half again and make eighths or different sections. But I want you to create your own fraction. Your own fraction, your own percent, using a frequent fraction or some visual representation. Think about, you can make it a little bit more than a half. You can make it a little bit more than 25% and kind of use an estimation and think about what would it be between, maybe between 25%, but less than 50%, but more than 25%. So think about that. Just come up with an example. We'll look at it when we're in class and talk about it when we're in class, but go ahead and do that and shade it in and then write down what the fraction, the decimal, the percent would be. We'll be reviewing these in class. And now it is time for you to show what you know. Please log in and do your homework quiz. This will be for a grade.